Okay, this is a good group here today. Hi, everybody. So just a few quick announcements. Thank you all for being here. And wow, so much to say. This is a recorded meeting. I'm recording it, but I don't want anybody using AI or a note taker or whatever. Don't want the meeting transcribed. And that's per the request of the meeting participants. So if you have note taker on, please don't do it. Now, this week, Thursday at 1 p.m. is our posting day. We post together. What we do is, for the purposes of boosting performance in the algorithm and getting the word out about the Transparent Advisor movement, we have a posting day once a week where we support each other's postings. Normally it's Wednesday at 1 p.m., but on the weeks when we have our meetup, it's Thursdays at 1 p.m. So tomorrow is Thursday. Woohoo! See what 4 kids under 10 years old will do to you. It's unbelievable. Anyways, so Thursday at 1 p.m., we will be having our group discussion event. If you want to join it, if you're not already in our transparency chat, let me know. I just have to take a minute to admit some folks. Now, we're doing so many things here that I can just have to stop and announce them. I'm putting in the chat right now an example of a short. It's a short video that I did, less than 2 minutes. And I'm using this as a way to get the word out about transparency, like different myths and different things that the industry does to keep people in opacity, specifically insurance, for example. We're exposing these opaque aspects of finance through transparency shorts that are 2 minutes or less. Now, we've done 2 already. I did them with Elan Moaz, the author of Lapsed, a book about deceptive practices in insurance. The short that I just put into the chat actually got about 16,000 views on LinkedIn. Woohoo! That was a huge win. And a lot of people joined, like consumers, because they're directed at consumers. They're useful for advisors, but they're also directed at consumers. So this is my effort to gain followers for the program. A lot of times, when people get made aware of the transparency movement, when consumers may be made aware, then what happens is they inevitably come to us when they need an advisor, and that's a win for us, right? Protecting them. That is actually protecting them in a material way. So if you want to do a short video with me, I will coach you on it. It's less than 2 minutes. It's very hard to do a short video like that, but I coach. We record about half an hour and then I edit it. I don't charge people for this. This becomes my content, but you're featured in it. And for that reason, I don't charge anybody for it, but it can be used for you to market yourself too, because you're going to be speaking publicly on a transparency topic. Okay, so let me know if you want to do a short. You know how to reach me. The other thing is, I'm also going to put into the chat, hold on one sec. Let me just let some folks in here, if you could. Sorry, everybody. I have to be a little bit more careful because there's a lot of AI stuff that tries to come in and I have to block it. Okay, so the other thing that I'm going to put into the chat is I'm going to put my calendar in there. And here's why. I'd like to speak with each of you that are involved in the transparency movement. If we have not met face to face, or even if we have, but we haven't spoken in a while, I have an in-person event once a year, the Immersion in March. Now, my goal as I wouldn't say the leader of this group, I would say I'm more the evangelist, okay? Meaning I communicate within the group to participants, to advisors and planners within the group, to help to unify the group and get us to help each other. That's the point of Immersion. It's our in-person event in March. We immerse with each other, okay? And we help each other share common practices. A lot of you think that you have to do this alone, and I want to tell you that you don't. You don't have to make the mistakes that other people have made. Use this capital. This is intellectual capital here, available to you for free through this transparency group. Meet with me. Let's talk about your practice. Let's talk about what your challenges are. It helps me because you're my eyes and ears, excuse me, so that I can recycle the knowledge back to the group. But also, every time I meet with a transparent advisor, a flat fee advisor, an advice only planner, you know, a lot of you are doing this alone. A lot of you are doing this without a lot of guidance as to the path forward, right? Because a lot of you are charting a new course. So I get challenges and questions that you're having, and then I pose them to the group, and then we get answers together. Okay, so it's nurturing, it's mutually nurturing. Meet with me if you haven't. I just sent you my calendar. There we go. Now, the last link that I'm going to put in there is the link for the August meetup. We're going to be having Kirk Chisholm, who is a experienced financial advisor. I mean, talking about made all the mistakes, he will tell you himself that for years he tried to call on CPAs unsuccessfully, and then created a formula for how to successfully covet and nurture relationships with CPAs. He's going to be in our August meetup. Go ahead and sign up. Now, Immersion 2025, I just want to tell you that the tickets are on sale, and it will be in Kansas City. The spots of this for this event are limited, and I had quite a few signups. I actually more than I actually thought on the early bird, and I was surprised. But there are still spots available, and you know, if you have questions about the immersion, if it would be useful to you, then let me know. If you anything about the immersion, but just check it out if you haven't already. Okay, and so lastly, here we are. We're going to be talking about life transitions today, and Susan Bradley is somebody that you know, I've known for a few years now. Really grateful for the relationship. I think she's great, and she's going to talk with you about something that you probably know a little bit about, but would be so useful to know more about: life transition. So Susan, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. I have really been looking forward to being with all of you. I did not know about the Transparent Advisor movement until I ran into Sarah at another conference recently. And the future of the profession. And there are other people joining you, and the Garrett Group, for instance, has been doing some kind of work like this from the beginning. Cheryl and I go way back. But the way you're organizing and with your evangelists, I think you've got some great leadership, as well as Eileen with Garrett, and it's nice to see there. So there's a shift that's happening. And what's our story is we've been looking at the human side of transitions for 25 years. And if you've been in the business for that long, you've already been working with clients in transition for 25 years. If you've been in the business for 1 year, you've been working with clients in transition. These are the events that drive our profession, whether you're on the AUM side or the commission side, or where you all are on transparency. These events that they see, because events are normal in life, to manage them when they happen, or to adjust to all the changes that come. So Sarah, is it okay with you if I share my screen and show a couple of slides here? Just, we're not doing a PowerPoint here. This is a discussion.
Yep, you sure betcha. Go ahead. Yep.
I thought you would like to see some data on this, and it just fell off my screen, so it'll just take me a moment. The truth is, and maybe we don't even need the slide, there are on average 36 transitions in a person's lifetime. That's a lot. 5 or 6 of them end up being the kind of event that people come to you for. And those are the big ones. And this is your space. It's retirement, it's widowhood, it's divorce, it's the sale of a business. It could be a change in health. These are the kind of events where life gets uncertain and people need extra help and extra time. The interesting thing is the research also shows that they are non-linear experiences, that really the hallmark is uncertainty and discomfort. Doesn't have to be a total mess in your life, but none of us human beings like being confronted with this amount of disruptive change. There is a normal stress response. And that stress response kind of collides with good decision making. So we're set up in the culture that we're in to not really even acknowledge transitions. It's a big blind spot. We see change, we see a divorce or a death or a retirement or the sale of a business, but we don't necessarily understand how that change is being internalized, how brain and body are shifting, and how people are struggling really to be able to keep their feet on the ground, because everything is different. Their norms, their routines, their relationships, their responsibilities, sometimes their vocabulary, the way their money works, maybe the way their house works, maybe the way they think about themselves. And in our culture, we think this isn't so hard, so you should be able to do this. And the truth is it is inherently challenging. We work in 5 continents. I was on with our India advisor group this morning, working on a continuous study program. And I showed them a case that we had done in another group, wondered if it would work. And sure enough, they had cases just like this. This is big human stuff. So what I'd like to do is to open up a discussion. What do you guys see about with your clients in transition? Is it an important time to them? Is it identified by them? Do they make decisions the way they always did? Do they change a little bit? What are you seeing? I think we can just speak it out. We don't have to use the chat, right, Sarah?
Yep, speak out, or you could use the chat if you want. Some people like chatting.
Well, I'll start off, Susan, and thanks for being here, by the way. I've had a few situations over the years, including one recent, sort of what you'd normally think of as the transitions. Someone, for example, just lost their mother, received a large inheritance. He's 29. What do I do with all this? All of a sudden, I've got all this money. But most of my clientele are reaching out to me. It's not a single point transition in time. It's more they hit that realization that, oh, wait a minute, retirement's not this thing in the future 30 years from now. It's 2 years from now, 5 years from now. I got to figure this out. So it's more of that. They kind of reach that breaking point that I got to start really thinking about this more seriously.
Kevin, thanks for bringing that up, because most people don't think of retirement as a transition event. And what we've noticed is that when money changes, life changes, and when life changes, money change. And retirement is both. It's a life change and a money change. And I think it's a blind spot in a culture and maybe even for us, because you think if you have financially prepared someone for this event, because you know them, prepared. But then there's the whole dark side of retirement. It's not so easy. It's getting a lot of play right now. So, I come from Florida, the land of the newlywed and the nearly dead, So we get a lot of the retirement life in the country club, cards, golf, like that. But under the surface, there's a lot more going on. So thanks for bringing up retirement.
This is Francisco, and I started working with, actually, she's another financial planner recently who is going through divorce. And she is a great financial planner. She's a complete whiz on Excel. She even developed her own financial planning course. So she is good at this. It's not like if she doesn't know. The divorce has been very emotional for her. She wants an objective third person to help her think through some of these things, right? So not to let the emotions drive her financial decisions as they kind of navigate this whole transition period with her kids and stuff like that. So yeah, it's you know, it's when the emotions can blind us, can make us make irrational decisions or things like that we get to help clients stop with a lot.
Yeah, and help ourselves, right, Francisco? I mean, here you
Correct.
have
Yes.
us and
Yes.
knows it all. I run into that all the time. I don't do much private coaching, but the small amount I do are frequently with people like you just described, financial planners who are experiencing the human side. They got the numbers, but it's a really world that these major events where people need the most help are the time, and they make those decisions that shape the rest of their life. It's the time that frequently, not all the time, the brain goes offline. You go into short-term fear-based thinking instead of long-term. You get tired and you acquiesce. It's really common in divorce that one of the parties just says, I am so tired of doing this, whatever, just do it. And there's a version of that in every kind of event that we work in. And there's that human stress, exhaustion, the attention span changes, memory changes, recall. You know, like clients when they're in these events tend to ask you the same question over and over again. Does it drive you a little bit crazy? Didn't I just tell you? Didn't we just do this? We actually have studied those for these repeating challenges. That's what we've been doing for 25 years. And one of them, by the way, is if you can create a really good visual for people, you can increase recall, according to data, by about 600%. So somebody can look at the visual when they're home, not remembering what you said, and it helps someone, particularly in divorce, to get re-anchored in what's important to them. Thanks for bringing up divorce. We say the CDFA and the technical and the human side complete each other. We're the human side and the CDFA is the technical. I thought that was a catchy line. I thought that Sarah might give me some credit for some good word speak there. Who else?
Yeah, you were like William Shakespeare there, Susan.
Yeah, me and Bill are tight. Past
CDFA
lives, you know that.
is the divorce financial analyst. For those of you, CDFA is divorce financial analyst. Okay, it's an industry group certification for people that specialize in divorce.
And it's excellent stuff. It's excellent. So what are some of the other events that you all see? Anybody have an NFL player or a $1 billion lottery winner? If you do, think about passing. That's very hard work to do. Terminal illness. Yeah, terminal illness is a tough one. It puts a whole different lens on life. Generally, it creates change and disruption for everyone connected to the person with that diagnosis. So it's layers, and there's some real consequences. That actually is the case that I just mentioned with India. It's a case of a terminal diagnosis of a business owner who thought everything was pretty good. He had no indication something was wrong, got that diagnosis, and wants to sell everything and move to the home country that he comes from so his whole family can experience it before he goes. But that's disrupting all kinds of things. And it's really, really hard. You can run the numbers in something like that. And you could work with the CPA. I know that's a topic for next month, and the attorneys and maybe real estate people. So you're collaborating with other professionals as opposed to competing. So you're learning how to be a collaborative while the clients are going through a lot of stress, and just the medical treatment is high stress. And you're supposed to be able to tell them what assets to sell or not sell and how to do this and that. It really takes us a long time. Even though we've been studying this and we have our certified financial transitionist designation, and people are on different levels of learning there. But even the high level people, the mastery people, you get stumped by human behavior, and you got to take a pause. And you have to think about this a little bit differently than traditional training. Someone just said laying off, getting any kind of career disruption. By the way, I think that's number 7 on the top 10 most stressful life experiences. 9 of the top 10, according to the Holmes Race inventory, are things that you all deal with. It's loss of spouse, it's divorce, it's loss of death of a loved one, retirement, like that. The only one that's not maybe in your norm is imprisonment. That's, I think, number 3. So maybe you've been able to avoid that. But, in the world we live in, whatever. So, yeah, being laid off, and particularly as we're all in the passage stage from pandemic, we're in the adjustment stage, and that will be years long from a transitionist point of view. So, and depending upon the age as well. Here's my screen. Let me pull this up for you. I'm going to also give you these 2 slides that I'm going to show you here. They are things that are CEFTs. Let me just advance there. Transitions happen in stages. It is not just the date of the divorce. There's a pre-settlement or an anticipation stage. The death of a spouse, in the experience we just said, there is the diagnosis stage and a time leading up to it. Retirement, classic. Anticipation stage, we tend to prepare financially and maybe lifestyle a little bit. Not everything has an anticipation stage. A lottery winner doesn't have that. By the way, that's a really stressful event. It's really stressful. But most events have this preparation time period. It might be a couple of years. It might be that something's going to happen. You don't know exactly when. You have an idea that there's what the finances might be, but you really don't know. So you're anticipating. The stage is that you can have future spending, or people saying like, oh, when my parents pass, I'm going to get a lot of money. So I don't really need to fund my 401k now. I can spend that on the house I want. That kind of stuff. That's hard. But you can do a lot to prepare people for the known and unknown events, how they make decisions. You can develop systems for making decisions under stress, how they are in meetings and how they follow up and how they implement, what's their strength. You can work on that and identify things like that and talk about expectations. So when they hit ending stage, that's when the feathers hit the fan. There's no going back. The career is over, the life is over, the marriage is over, the business is sold, and it's not clean usually. They really need you because there's, the pieces of life just kind of a pretty strong human experience at the same time. That ending stage might last a year, 2 years, even 3 if there's complexity in assets or relationships. But ending is putting the fundamentals back. And then the next stage of passage, that's that time of adjustment and adaptation. And this is a trickier spot because it lasts longer. And it's when you or your client is starting to feel their way into this new set of possibilities. It's a great time to help people rethink and reimagine. The divorced financial planner that was brought up earlier, I think that was Kevin or Francisco. If she's selling her business and getting divorced, that's a double whammy. It happens in life, you know, it's not a clean thing each transition happens. So she's got an overlap. So she might be settling the divorce in the ending stage and still anticipating selling her business, or she may be adjusting to lifestyle without the business. So the complexities can continue. The passage stage, in her case, probably she will have years where she is adjusting to the divorce, even though everything seems cut and done. And she's also adjusting to not having a business, if that were the case. We find passage stage takes about 5 years. I don't always tell everybody that. I don't, particularly if they're grieving or their life feels really messy. There's no way to say, hey, don't worry about that. 5 years from now, you'll be fine. I wouldn't want to hear that. But you just let them know they're not there yet. And you, if you have some training around this, you can help them go through for the next one, the new normal. That's when everything is over. You can come back and say, hey, what worked, what didn't work? What do you wish you had had? What would you tell someone else? And you and your client can develop their own personal way of going through transitions, because it's going to happen again. It's the way life goes. Let's take a look at this next slide that I have here. Excuse me. And this is something I would also like to put in the chat for you. What I was saying earlier, best practice for a CEFT is to take that stages slide and this slide and put them on a laminated piece for conversation with a client. It helps frame it. It helps normalize it. There's some logic to this. You're not alone. Others have gone through it, kind of thing. So in this part of it, the other side, we talk about the technical and the personal, and it really helps people get some validation that they're having some emotional experience. They're not the way they used to be. Something's different right now. And we talk about the complexity and that the personal side drives choices and decisions. But here's the cool thing. You can have a conversation with a client about what's going on with them. If you just say, oh, gee, there's a lot happening, tell me how you feel. It kind of puts people on the spot. They don't always know exactly what to say. What are the words? There's a lot of shame in not being totally cool and happy about everything and under control. Our culture doesn't like that in between stuff. It's called liminality, by the way. It's interesting part of our research. So, but anyway, you're sitting with a client, they're going through stuff, have this conversation, stages and the two sides, but then ask them, look at flow and look at struggle. What's familiar? Anything here familiar to you? I'd really like to know. And that's when the conversation really gets good. So you take a look at these. What do you see with your clients? Any of these things come up? Flow is obviously implies positive and struggle implies negative, and it doesn't have to be either or. You might get a combination.
Francisco, again, I know for the client, the financial planner going through divorce, it's very much mental and physical fatigue. She's really struggling with that right now.
Yeah. I don't know about you, Francisco, but I don't make my best decisions when I'm tired.
Yeah.
And for someone to say, oh, you need to go home and get some sleep is kind of pointless. Because if she could, she would. You, when you see that, when you see fatigue.
We're just taking it slow. We're taking it as a transition period. A long one, a long transition period where she doesn't have to make any hard decisions now. Be able to get her finances into a place that will not require her to make any big financial decisions. Just kind of keep it steady for a while, until she has more mental clarity, more energy to be able to think things through.
Yeah, spot on. We have 3 protocols, just 3. And the first one is to keep the client safe, and that's what you're doing. You're keeping her in a place, you're giving her reason to step back and to not make decisions. You're validating once she's okay. We call it the decision-free zone, so it's a way of structuring urgency and timelines, but giving her that pause so she can start to recover her clarity and her confidence. And you'll see it. Probably it will show up a little bit one day, and then maybe a little more another day, then be gone. And then so it's not like hit the button. The other thing that we do, the second of our protocols, is to go to the balcony. And that is to get a big landscape view of things rather than just sticking to the details. So you're going back and forth as needed. And sometimes when people are really tired, but they have to make a decision, there's some time urgency there, usually not of their making. From the balcony, if you go away from the decision and situation, there can be a calming experience to see how things connect from a high view. That combined with what you just said about time is really helpful. And the third of our principles is to give the work back. It's the client that takes the lead on the human side. She'll tell you when she's more ready for things. And it's something like this, you would use maybe with a client like that. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you some idea of best practices, is to take a look at this with her periodically and say, last time we talked about it, I think you said this. What's up now? What's familiar? So you develop shared vocabulary and a shared understanding that this isn't static and that you're paying attention. You're pretty challenging to work with someone who's maybe on your level with financial planning. And so she knows, but she's just not able to focus at this time. That's a really interesting case. Thanks for mentioning. Anybody else? What do you see here? Do you see people with a lot of clarity and focus, and they're ready to move forward? They're composed and connected. Connected, by the way, means connected to some sense of community. That's a big part of stress management and self-regulation.
I see little bits of all of these things. You see a lot of people that are engaged and connected and ready to tackle things, but then equally you're dealing with folks that are have a variety of different struggles. One that I see a lot is the narrow focus, right? Their minds. And even though we as planners can say, well, geez, that's not important, we need to focus on all these other things first. What I've certainly learned over the time is you can't do that, right? You got to scratch their itch first and address it before you move on to what you think is important.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. Narrow focus. And typically it's not the most important thing. And it gets attention to the exclusion of others. And the neuropsych people are really interesting in helping us understand why that experience happens, the one that you just described, that you have to address it. You can't just dismiss it. By the way, 70% of women and women divorced and widowed women tend to leave their advisor in the second year after the event. And a lot of it is not being heard on, say, a narrow focus. On it, you address it, and then you put it into context. So it's there. And maybe you visually keep it in your agendas or on your visual pieces so they know that it hasn't gone away. And it does switch the way the brain works. Dr. Moira Summers is one of our faculty members, and she wrote the book, Advice That Sticks. I highly recommend it. So, it's one thing to intuitively know, both what you just said and Francisco and Kevin is intuitively there. It's interesting to know a little bit about the science and then to add a protocol that enhances that experience that you're trying to create for your client. So this stuff is all over the place. I don't know. Do you feel like you could use these 2 slides and have a conversation with your clients? This should be kind of in your space. One of the things that happens with showing this is you normalize. And normalizing also shifts the brain from the fight-flight brain to the prefrontal cortex. And those kinds of shifts can happen in very short periods of time. So when you're using tools and process like we do in our world, we train ourselves to use them frequently and in different ways. So it's a basic tool. It's like it's like what do you call those tools? The Leatherman that has the scissors and the screwdriver. My husband never leaves home without it when we're traveling. He's got it in the car, he's got it in his suitcase. So whatever comes up, the Leatherman. So when you're doing that with these tools, like how does somebody feel most productive and most confident in a meeting? Knowing that somebody needs homework beforehand, they need to feel prepared. Somebody else doesn't want any of that stuff. If you give it to them, then they feel like they didn't prepare. So it backfires. Knowing that someone likes to go right to the bottom line first and then tell you about it, or finding out that they want the whole landscape and then focus. And people actually know the answers to how can I help you be focused, comfortable, and productive in a meeting. But we had to give them a process. It just takes a few minutes to ask. Hugh Massey taught me a lot of that back 20 some years ago. So we use a communication preference. So you might know that this client needs a clean, just an agenda so they can follow along with you. They need it in front of them. So if they feel like they're getting lost, they can look. They need time to make a decision, and this is the kind of time, or this is the preparation. So it's great. So you do that. And then the feathers hit the fan again, or they get triggered, because a lot of this is deep emotions that get triggered. You might find that none of that works. So you're working with someone 6 months into it, and all of a sudden they're not responding. They're not implementing, they're not showing up for meetings, something's off. So this is a balcony moment where you can go back and reconsider one tool or another, maybe the decision process or the education, communication, or maybe the expectations that they've had, or maybe their why has changed. So they're offline somehow. So the tools we have in our training, we have 9. Overall, we have about 40, and none of them are there for tool's sake. We don't have a number we're going towards. We just we create something based on an experience, but we find that they have to go for all the experiences, and they have to be repeatable, wash and repeat kind of thing. You have things like that, don't you? You have tools that you use that probably always work. So it's just expanding that. Does anybody have any more questions about transitions? Have you had more lately than you had in the past?
How did you get into this?
Oh, by kind of happenstance. 1995, I ran across a class action lawsuit of women with medical injuries that was supposedly going to pay them some money. I knew the lawyer. He was telling me the story, and I said, "Man, this is not working." These women were all future spending, the stories he was telling me, and they are not prepared. They had no financial literacy. So I said, I'll write you a white paper for them. And they were all over the country. It wasn't like 4 clients. And in the middle of writing the white paper, I realized nobody else was looking at this back then, except to sell annuities, which I'm sure you all don't do very much, but that's where the expertise was. And then the company they were suing went into bankruptcy. The law firm called me, they said the deal's off. This is what happened. I said, oh, wow, they're all going to go into bankruptcy from what you're telling me. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. We handle bankruptcy. And that was so appalling. It just, and I never changed back. So I wrote Sudden Money because I really wanted to read it. I wanted a model for change. And then we realized we were only halfway there. Change is important, but transitions is really where it happens. Bruce Feiler's book of Life is in the Transition is spot on. Good recommendation. So in 03, we found, or 02, I guess, we went through 9/11 and we realized again what was happening in the industry. In industry rise, we would say things like, oh, they're going to get a $5 million life insurance, so they're fine. And it just was not true. So we ended up finding Bill Bridges' work on transitions. He's sort of the father of all this. He did it in the corporate space. I didn't want to do any institute or anything, but my colleagues wanted to gather around it. And I thought we were going to be collaborating. Nobody wanted to collaborate. They wanted me to selling my business a couple years into it and in 08, when again, life was a collective experience of tough circumstances, they voted on having a designation and calling ourselves transitionists. And when you have a designation, you need for real training. So since 2010, we've done the for real training. And, every year there's more to learn. So I am a financial planner. Everyone in our community is a financial planner. So we created this for financial planners, but by financial planners. So it's not real sciencey. It's client friendly. Thanks for asking. I hope I didn't go too long on that
Yeah,
one.
it's great. I mean, you've built a great following. I've talked to several folks, including 1 or 2 on this call, that always just sing praises of the program.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's wonderful to hear. I'll show you
Susan,
one.
did you get to bullet points 5 and 6? Sorry about that. I just need to kind of land the plane because we only have about 15 minutes.
I think we kind of jumped over those. Could I just go to the last?
Sure.
Okay. Dr. Moira Summers does a lot of research. She's a PhD in adherent behavior. She jokes and says that's a PhD in procrastination. And she studies how people make decisions. And she got together with us about 10 years ago. She was just interested, and she's been with us ever since, maybe even more than 10, I don't know. Anyway, in her book on advice that sticks, studying clients and financial planners and doing research, she came up with these 7 reasons why people hire a financial planner. The data says 70% of people who hire a financial planner are doing that because of a major life event. She narrows that down. She says this is what's inside it: to reduce complexity, to help us take action, to save time, to boost confidence, to make better trade-offs, to receive encouragement, and to help us persist. Does that ring true? My guess is it almost always rings true with financial planners. It's so nice and clearly stated the way she did this. And what we find is that all of these reasons are amplified when people are facing a major life change. And that is independent education, sophistication, even a financial planner, as Francisco said. These events are hard to be fully planned for. You do want to prepare, but when they're happening, that other side, that human side, just has to find some footing and find a new way to go, because you can't go back. And it is, if you've been through one recently yourself, that's when you really know what we're talking about here. So what we had to do is we took Moira's information here and we had to think about, how do we do each of these things? And we never created a process for these things, but we looked at our process, and I'm going to encourage you to do that too. Look at your process and see, what do you do to reduce complexity? So the bottom one, help persist. Persistence is one of the human life skills for transition, to stay in it. Some people just drop out. They get exhausted, they get overwhelmed, they're pretty sure that they can't do it, life is over, they cave, and they miss all these great opportunities. So helping people stay in for the long haul, how to rest while that's happening. You don't want people to be exhausted. You want them to really be rising a little bit higher in capacity all the time. And like Francisco said, hold off the things that don't need to be decided. So I thought you might enjoy looking at this list from Dr. Moira. I can tell you that we have experienced all these tools and process, but you might too. Hi, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering, in a lot of other areas adjacent to financial therapy, there's like significant confusion. Like, for 30 years, a lot of people thought that the stages of grief were linear and sequential. Then when we go back to their words, we found out, oh, that's not what she meant at all. And everybody got it wrong in colleges, and they were teaching it wrong to everybody for, if you had a magic wand, like what things would you make sure that everybody understood? What's the misconceptions? What's the things that are easy to get wrong about transitions and people going through them?
How long it takes. How long it takes. Most people expect it to take maybe a year, maybe two. And having that expectation can create a lot of blind spots. By the way, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had a terminal illness in New Mexico. I have friends who were friends of hers, and she herself wasn't going through the stages, and she had the, oh my gosh, moment. And she writes about it in Vanity Fair. I couldn't talk about it for years, but there's a story about how even she didn't know. So thank you for that question, because I could have my blind spots too. Thank you, Daniel. Eileen, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. I was so excited to see that you were on the call. And I just think your work, and, I've known you from way, way back when with the Sudden Money, and, now with the Financial Transitions Institute. When I see someone has this credential, it just makes a difference to me of how they speak, the confidence level in working with clients. And I just wanted to do my own little shout out that, I think your work has been just so inspiring for folks that are in the industry. And it's given everyone, I think, a different level of confidence versus on the fly figuring out how to work with people in these kinds of situations. So I just wanted to, personally thank you, and my excitement of seeing you on a call like this, because all of us need these tools and a chance to really expand if we're different, and if we're working with our clients in a much more in-depth level. This is the extra work we all need to do for ourselves and our business. So thank you, Sarah, for bringing in Susan. And again, Susan, just delighted to see you here.
Thank you so much for that. That's coming from you. And Sarah, inviting me here. This is the kind of stuff, because your communities are like our communities. We're really moving way ahead of the tradition. this is a great profession, but it could be greater. And that's what you guys are doing. Thank you, Eileen. And I appreciate your leadership at Garrett too.
I don't know if we got in the chat the diagrams.
I'm going to put them in right now.
Thank you.
Say that I really liked that list that you shared from Dr. Moyer Summers. And my reaction to that is I kind of want to take that list to clients and prospective clients to ask them what they're looking for. It's almost a roadmap of what's most important for them. So I know where to focus during that engagement.
Yeah. Okay.
That's the first thing I thought too, Kevin.
I mean, you're transparent. So that's a real honest conversation. There are 3 words you might also go over with your clients: clarity, confidence, and agency, which is different than control. And you can ask, how are they doing in those? Do they? Because they seem pretty fundamental too. Confidence, clarity, and agency, in whatever order you want. Let me get the stages up.
The only thing on that Morris Summers slide, though, one of the reasons I think you may have left off, I'm not sure, maybe I just didn't get it, was maybe accountability. Once I met with this couple and I asked them, like, why do you want to, this was way back like 20 years ago when I was a financial advisor. And the guy said, I just messed up something in the stock market and my wife is going to divorce me unless I get someone else to blame. So that's why I'm hiring you. But sometimes they might need, like, so, you know, like just somebody that might be true, actually. Like
Yeah, it depends on the circle.
Or like even for them to have accountability for some stuff, like maybe like to help them shape their behaviors, someone to be accountable to for their behaviors, like a personal trainer kind of thing. So that their spouse doesn't have to get in fights with them over stuff.
It can be, I don't know, sometimes that set me up right away for passing on the client. I like to collaborate. But you know, yeah, people have different social behaviors also when the chips are down. It's a stress response. One of the things we were looking at is kindness. There's kind of a loss in kindness sometimes. And because people are sort of freaked out. So what you're talking about to me is a stress response. And could I manage it or not? I don't know. I'd like to see. So I posted the 2 sides. We print them on a laminated piece. So it has one side is stages, the other side is the 2 sides of money, 4 stages, 2 sides of money. Did y'all get that?
I don't see it.
Huh, looks good on mine. Oh, it went to Eileen.
Yeah.
All for you, Eileen. That's
only because earlier I told Susan I wasn't seeing something she was saying, so she accidentally had me in the link. Nothing else was said offline, I promise.
that is exactly right.
And, you know, just Susan, it's funny when you accidentally do things on the fly. I just early on in my career, and I think most folks know I don't see clients any longer, but every time a new prospect called me, I would always start with, hey, before we get into any of this, what made you today pick up the phone and it was my own indirect way. And I realize now from your work, it kind of led right into this. And again, seeing the verbiage and the words would have made me that much more comfortable. I wasn't inventing my responses, but I just to toss that out to everybody, it just seemed to ground the conversation just by starting that way. Because you're asking earlier about how do you incorporate that into your business or using Dr. Summers' feedback. It just helped that conversation. Why today? What made you pick up the phone? What's going on in your world? It just immediately took us into the human side, and I never had to put on the financial planner hat. And I just felt the relationship started. And again, Susan, I think it may go back from having known you as early as the earlier days of Sudden Money. It was just ingrained in me. Stay on the human side from the very beginning of a conversation with any prospect.
Thank you, Eileen. I think I learned back, I'm a Nasrudin original, and yes, I eat granola, but would have is that the human side and the technical side are equally important and equally complex. So it's a challenge to build human side skills on the same plane or same level as you have your technical, and then let them inform each other. It's not either or, it's the consilience of the two. I think I'm overstaying my time, and I apologize for that. You see them now, right? Okay, good. I'm going to try and get you this slide from Moira. Is there anything else that I can do? Anything else, questions I could answer, or situations you'd like a little bit of feedback on?
I have a question, just a little bit more on like the 5-year transition. This is Kelly. What happens, in year 2 and year 3? Are there sort of milestones in that transition, and is stability found at certain points? I like thinking about what that means. It's like, is there turmoil for 5 years and then it's stable? It feels like there's sort of must be like an evolution or progression. I'm just curious about your perspective on that.
Carrie, you're right. And if you have widow clients, you might talk to them about what they see, but a universal and not an absolute response is the second year is the toughest, because it feels like the pain and the numbness, the confusion is never going to end. They've had a couple good days and then they go back to feeling the way it was. So that's when you get people acquiescing and leaving their advisor and changing. And it's apparently it's a common blind spot for advisors to think that their client has made it through the tough first year, things are looking okay. Internally, it typically is not feeling that way. The third year is the beginning, they say, of coming out and sort of getting focus again, getting recognized, the world, and trying to get a feel for the decisions made. And then over the next couple of years, it's a couple of shifts and changes in how life is going to work. And if you can help someone with the concept to think beyond what is to what might be, the reinvention, and that some people are very open to it. They just need a little guidance. Other people, maybe they don't want it at all. Kathleen Reel is a great source for this. What is it? Wings and Widows is another group, and the Modern Widows Club. The last two do a lot of research on widows. The Wings for Widows is male and female, so widow, widower. But there is we wrote a guidebook one time. It was massive long, way too long. I'm looking back at, I guess I was trying to prove something, but you just, collapse it to 10%. But showing a widow what the journey might look like, that they might go through, not in timeline, but in sort of the stages, seemed to be very helpful. That, oh yeah, I've had that. And if they say, wait, I'm not that, you just say, I'm not there yet. Carol Dweck's work changes the brain. Not yet. You will be, just not yet.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the question, Carrie. Anything else? When I turn it back to you, Sarah, and I'll get that last slide up before you all close out. You have a minute or two.
Susan, how can people reach you?
Thank you. The easiest thing to remember is Sudden Money Institute. Mischaracterizes us, but it's easy to remember. And from there, there's a section for advisors, and you'll find out about what we have to offer. Or you can email me directly. I like that. I'm susan@suddenmoney.com.
Everybody, I'm going to put her email in the chat.
Thank you.
Okay, so boom, it's right there. Just send her an email if you want to talk to her. She's very approachable.
And if you would like to be kept up, we have a micro credentialing course coming out for women in transition. We'll keep you posted about that.
Yeah. Well, what I take away from this is, we're running over here, but maybe if I just keep you all for a minute, is that this is one of the areas where the emotional quotient is so powerful. And I mean, as somebody with a special needs child, I mean, I wouldn't say there's a transition that comes with that, but there are many, and one big transition that comes with that, right? But there are so many transitions are in fact hard for my son, right? And so I've seen, my son has autism, okay? And so I've seen the world just turn a blind eye and in fact judge both of us when my son, I mean, he's a child, right? So a child is not in control of their emotions like an adult, and he will actually melt down when he's overwhelmed. So I like this because I think what Susan is speaking to is maybe making, it's a lot about the communication between you and the client. And I liked when you showed that visual, because I think that makes it less overwhelming for people. And I can say that like both my son and I and Antonio are totally overwhelmed all the time by my son's autism, right? But the world, like, you should see the response that the world gives us. And I was so flabbergasted the other day. We were in church. We have a coffee hour after church, and the church catechism director came over. My son's going to be in first communion class, and she was talking to my son, and I was nervous about it. I got to tell you, I was nervous about it. But she said the most amazing thing to him. She said, "Okay, Ziggy," that's his nickname. I don't say my son's real name. Sorry to the public. I just never publicizing it, right? So whatever. She says, "Okay, Ziggy." She talks about something. And then she said, "Hold up 3 fingers if you really got what I said. Hold up 1 if you didn't get it all. And hold up 2 if you kind of got it and you want me to explain more." And he held up like 2 fingers or 3 fingers or whatever, but it made him feel comfortable instead of overwhelming. And I mean, we've been to special ed classes and therapists, like we've had evaluators that this is what they do. They double question. They'll say to my son, like, they'll say like, "Ziggy, what did you have last night for dinner?" Like, first of all, overwhelming for me. I don't know what I had last night. I think I had cereal for dinner last night, right? Okay, first of all, overwhelming question for any of us. But she's asking my kid this, and then he doesn't answer because with autism, the brain processes information differently. And then she double questioned him. She asked again before waiting for him to respond. And I'm like, oh, this is not going to go well. And then she does the evaluation and she comes up with like a vast underestimation of my son's intellectual abilities. We had to go get a private consultation done and pay out of pocket. Okay, so you see what I'm saying, right? So sorry to get on a soapbox here, but look, I can't say I'm the best communicator in the world all the time, but I could just tell you that I think this is very good, Susan, what you're saying. And just like what she's trying to tell you is understand that I mean, we talked about the stress component for a minute, like, maybe don't take it so bad if someone doesn't return your phone call, or if they are a little bit curt with you, or they don't want to talk, right? Like, understand what they're going through. Because I can just say, like, seeing how the world treats me and my son and Antonio, like, it's so easy and human to judge based on what you see, but understand, like, there's a symptom causing that, there's a mental process causing that behavior, but no one wants to think about that. It's just so easy to write people off. Sorry for just going nuts there on that.
You're right.
All right, do you want to end the meeting now? Okay, everybody. I will see you in August. If you want to meet with me, I want you to be my eyes and ears. I can't make the world of financial services transparent without you. I need you to tell me if you think I stink, my group stinks, whatever, I can hear that too. Okay. I won't have hurt feelings. You know, I have a man that loves me the rest of my life. I have 4 kids. Like, I'm okay emotionally. I can take rejection. Okay. Just reject me if you want. Or if, you know, having like the immersion, I really would like us to have a good immersion. And if you're interested at all or questioning about it, just don't write that off so much either, because it's really different from most of the conferences that you would think about. So having said that, I'm going to end the meeting. Bye, everybody. See you next month.
Thank you,
Amen.
everyone.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.